The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 49. Pain. As soon as they arrived and caught sight of the brothel's sign, Wang Ji sneered coldly. So, it's this one. Your South Side gang were really hiding out in plain sight. The two leading the way were too afraid to make a sound, both bowing their heads and pretending to be obedient grandsons. Ordered to do so by Wang Ji and Suizhou, people from the Western Depot and Northern Administrative Court Division had already long encircled the brothel, enveloping it from head to tail to ensure that not even a mosquito could fly out of it. Hearing eunuch Wang's very acquainted tone, he apparently knew more about this place than the normal men at present. Were it not the right time nor the place to do so, Tang Fan might have started laughing for real. "What's is this building?" he instead asked, with a serious face. On the plaque above the main entrance was engraved the name Ziyang. The calligraphy was elegant and shone an outstanding literary grace. Without the bursts of giggles and dubious soft candle light coming from it, it could have been some kind of restaurant. "Wantong has a share in it," Wang Ji answered. This tidbit of information was a bit shocking to hear, but if one thought deeply about it, really wasn't anything strange. Since the Western Depot could become part owner of Xianqi restaurant, why couldn't there be a brothel owned by the Jinyues? Not only that, it could even be prettily justified that this was for intelligence gathering and information scouting purpose, as brothels, gambling dens, and restaurants were areas where people were coming and going. The more people there was, the more information could be gathered, which was in line with the purpose of such intelligence agencies. Thinking of that, Tang Fan looked at Suizhou. The man shook his head slightly at him, indicating that he had no idea about this. Apparently, Wang Ji was hinting at Wantong having a personal connection to the brothel. His elder sister was the consort, which made him an even more unreasonable capital character than Wang Ji was. Due to the establishment being owned by the Jinyue's commanding officer, the brothel's business had gotten even more prosperous, and there was no need to fear people from the different bureaus frequently coming to their door and soliciting bribes from them for all sorts of reasons. At the moment though, as they were about to come up to the door to do what they came to do, someone had already come out of it to welcome them. It was a gentle-looking middle-aged woman with a smile across her face, the outward owner of Ziyang. "Oh my, sirs! What kind of wind is blowing today? If you all wanted to come over and have fun, you only needed to say so ahead of time. Why make such a big scene?" She had seen that their numbers and might were impressive and that they hadn't come with goodwill in mind, but she wasn't panicking in the least. This demonstrated that she was self-assured. Wang Ji said nothing. There was no need for him to, really. Right behind him was a Western Depot squad leader named Ji Yang, who then ordered the two men to be put forward. "Talk less drivel. Do you recognize these two?" She glanced at them, smile unchanged. "I've never seen them before." He huffed out a laugh. "Come. Go in and search the place." Her face sank. "Hold on." Following her voice, more than a dozen big menacing-looking men came out from inside of the building, each of them tall, broad, and wielding clubs as they glared fiendishly at them. Simply outstanding. Tang Fan was not going to bring up who was in that group for now. Suizhou, Wang Ji, and the rest of them were all in officials' uniforms, and their distinct robes would tell anyone at a glance what bureau they had come from. Ordinary citizens wouldn't even have the time to hide once they caught sight of them, yet this brothel madam dared to openly stand off against them. Was this not the very definition of overconfidence? "You must be mad, you old fool!" Ji Yang bellowed. "Do you know who we are?" She was undisturbed as she answered. "I do, of course. You gents are from the Western Depot, are you not? Had you said that you were all here to seek pleasure, this old one would welcome you, but since you have made it clear that you're here to cause havoc, I won't be able to keep running my business if I let you in. The Western Depot has impressive might, but do you know who owns this place? It's an establishment listed under Wantong's name, right?" Wang Ji said at last. She narrowed her eyes and sized him up for a long while. Seeing how he was gathered around like stars to a moon, she smiled anew. Could you be Director Wang? Our house gives our courtesies. The Western Depot and Chenghua are as close as kin. Since you know the gains and losses amongst this, please be more accommodating on account of Commanding Officer Wan's dignity. Wang Ji was one of Consort Wan's people, and Wan Tong was her little brother. These were not secrets in society at large. However, a brothel madam having the nerve to threaten Wang Ji with Wan Tong made it clear that they weren't in alliance. With that said, she made a gesture and someone behind her offered up a tray. She lifted up a corner of the cloth covering it, instantly revealing the blindingly dazzling gold beneath it. Judging from its heavy weight, it was likely no less than 300 or 400 taels worth. Observing that they were all staring at the tray, she couldn't help but grin as she put the cloth back down. This tiny bit of kind regard is to buy drinks for you and your subordinates, Director Wang. There's no need to be humble, so please accept it. Wang Ji sneered icily, reaching outwards. Everyone looked on blankly as the tray was flipped over. All the gold twisted numerous times around in the air, then tumbled onto the ground, immediately filling it with glittering light. Are you good enough to bribe me? He said to the dumbstruck brothel madam. Saying a few words to you is already putting you in high enough regard. Don't take yourself to be anything of worth. She had made a massive mistake. This brothel had Wan Tong's investment in it, true. Given his connection with Wang Ji, the latter ought to give him some face. Conflict with him wouldn't be appropriate either, else it would get back around to Consort Wan and make it hard for him to act. The problem was that he was currently looking for someone and this place was confirmed to be connected to the perpetrator, the South Side Gang, perhaps being one of its hideouts. He would be bearing the brunt of it if the case couldn't be solved, so no matter what kind of emotional turmoil was brought up, he had to find the children. Besides, the brothel wasn't part of Wan Tong's assets, so raiding it wouldn't be regarded as anything at all. The brothel madam had mistakenly believed that using Wan Tong's name would calm Wang Ji down. Why had she thought that he would be easy to deal with? If he was too afraid to act against even an insignificant brothel, what would others think of him when word about that got out? Would he not be seen as a silver spear made of wax, impressive but ineffective? He didn't stop with scattering the gold, he even kicked the brothel madam over and ordered his subordinates, "Search the place." Wait. You can't go in. Her face finally contorted since he wasn't responding to either force or persuasion. Due to being kicked in the middle, she couldn't get up for a moment, only able to sit on the ground and holler. I'll go send someone to fetch Master Wan. You're not allowed in. That would be no use even if his own mother showed up, Wang Ji answered indifferently. Are you all still not going in to search? With that command, his subordinates directly unsheathed their blades. The several men guarding the main gate looked vicious, but how could they ever best the even more ferocious Western Depot wardens? In no more than a few exchanges, they had all collapsed onto the ground. Sui Zhou hadn't brought as many people tonight, and they weren't even here as they were all guarding the rear entrance of the brothel. He was not here to compete for power with the Western Depot. He followed them inside the establishment with Tang Fan behind. As soon as the brothel madam had seen the Western Depot arrive, she had thought that using Wan Tong's name would make tonight's major event a minor one. She hadn't anticipated that it would have no effect, nor that Wang Ji would pay her no mind. Since she had been confident 100-fold, she hadn't evacuated those inside, resulting in a bunch of cries of alarm when Wang Ji's group broke in. The customers in the lobby were frightened, having something of an identity, they were prepared to slip out the rear entrance, but, unbeknownst to them, there were people waiting for them outside. They couldn't even jump out the windows, let alone the back entrance. Ji Yang gave an order and then the wardens split up into several directions to outflank the upstairs, rapidly ascending to the second and third floors. All of the passages and doors to private rooms were kept watch on as the doors were kicked in. No matter what the people inside the rooms were doing, all of them got dragged out, which earned even more rising waves of screams. Everyone was brought out to congregate into the main lobby. Tang Fan lightly swept over them. There were a couple of officials present. Hoo boy. Even though the court had made it clear that officials were not allowed to go whoring, what man wouldn't sneak to do so? So long as no one found out, they wouldn't get denounced by the censors. Since Wantong was connected to the place, the confidentiality of everyone that came to play was supposedly safeguarded by the powers of the commanding officer. This caused Xiao Yang to be unusually popular with both the over- and underworlds, and business was great. Ordinary traders would frequently run into bureau workers using the excuse of collecting taxes to come and extort them, but because Xiao Yang's influence was too great, no one dared to drop by and look for trouble. Because of this, they hadn't expected to encounter ghosts from walking too much at night. Today, somebody wasn't afraid to make a mess of Xiao Yang, and everybody was tongue-tied as they watched the Western Depot barge in. You can't fault this old one for not warning you, Director Wang. You shouldn't burn your bridges like this, the brothel madam said sternly as she walked in with a limp. Wang Ji looked at her indifferently as if he was looking at a dead woman. Do you know which family the children missing tonight came from? She laughed coldly. Arrogant because of the backer she had, she stared straight at him with no amount of dread. How would I? You're being ridiculous. If a child is missing, go look for it. What does that have to do with my brothel? Among the children lost tonight, one is the youngest daughter of the Crown Prince's grand tutor, Zhu Yang, and another is the grandson of the Assistant Minister of Appointments. You've got some guts to be an accomplice of these villains and covered up the abduction of these children. Forget about one wantong, even 10 wantongs wouldn't save you. Her face was covered with a thick layer of makeup so no one could tell whether she went pale or not, but in her eyes, there showed some hesitation and disbelief at his words. It was different from the conceited look she was having before. Right then, the wardens had already turned the whole brothel upside down, and Ji Yang was seen to walk out of a storage room beside the back kitchens. Chief Eunuch Wang, there's a cellar here but nobody's inside it. Wang Ji glared harshly at the brothel madam. Where are they? She forced a smile. If you didn't find anyone, then that means that we've been accused wrongly. If you don't believe it, you can search again and see that I'm not lying. Sui Zhou and Tang Fan went straight into the storage room. A spot had been cleared out on the messy ground, revealing the entrance of a black hole. No one's below? Tang Fan asked. Ji Yang nodded. I went down and checked it out myself. The area below isn't large and there's no mechanisms for secret tunnels. Even if anyone had been hidden down there, there's no chance they could have escaped from it. There were a lot of things in there, like many miscellaneous foodstuffs, and items such as rope. It looked like a typical storage room. Even the existence of the cellar below it wasn't odd, as many business or large households would have one for use in storing some perishable foods. However, Tang Fan didn't drop the topic because of Ji Yang's words. He glanced at Sui Zhou and the latter immediately understood, taking a candle down from the wall. The two went down below, one after the other. Ji Yang was slightly displeased upon seeing this, thinking to himself, I said that I already checked it out. Are you two doubting me? He didn't descend, standing in place with his arms crossed, waiting to see how dejected they would look when they came up. Not long after, they did come up, but Tang Fan looked grave. People were kept below before. Ji Yang was skeptical. How could you tell? The cellar had to have been constructed some time ago, judging from the encasing walls. It is not possible that it would have been kept completely empty, but if it had been used to store foodstuffs, like pickled vegetables, there would be remnants of their smell, or traces of their storage here. However, the ground is so clean, there's no traces of anything, which means that it isn't being used to store such objects. Ji Yang had a sudden realization. He too, had felt that the cellar was strange but couldn't figure out why. As it turned out, he had forgotten to analyze the scent. How did they exit? Did they hear word on the wind before we got here? Tang Fan shook his head. From when we caught those two gang members, got their confessions and then came here, the time in between was too close and the people we have been in contact with was very limited. There's little possibility for word to leak out about it. They ought to have fled upon seeing our arrival. There's no other passages here, though. People are standing guard outside, so they would have gotten discovered as soon as they had left. Suizhou had already gone to investigate the storage room, using the hilt of his saber to prod at a lot of the foodstuffs piled up in the corners, and also jab at the surrounding walls. Ji Yang could tell that he was trying to look for another passageway. Unfortunately, nothing seemed to be uncovered. Ji Yang was a bit disappointed and was about to go to a different room to look around when he heard Suizhou speak up. There's something strange here. Turning his head, he saw that Suizhou was currently prodding at a huge hemp sack leaning against the wall, only for said sack not to budge at all from the action. Tang Fan stepped up and untied its opening, exposing chunks of stone that looked to weigh a couple thousand catties at a glance. No wonder Suizhou couldn't move it with his prodding. It would probably take 2 or 3 people to shift it. Why would a pile of rocks show up in a food storage room? There was no need for Tang Fan to explain as much. Ji Yang could tell that there was something weird going on. He and Suizhou joined hands to push the sack a little bit away. Spread out beneath it was a thin layer of straw. Upon sweeping that away, a thick floor tile could be seen covering the ground. In spite of it trying to blend in with the floor around it as much as it could, it still left some signs of itself behind. Suizhou and Ji Yang pried the tile up, then saw that there was indeed a hidden entrance below that seemed to go even deeper than the cellar. Wherever it led was unknown. Ji Yang realized that the ones that had dug out this tunnel were very cunning. They had made an easy-to-find cellar so that when people saw there was no one inside, they would subconsciously go to look in other spots, not guessing that there would be another hidden entryway in the room. Moreover, the stuffed sack on top of it looked exactly like the sacks around it that held food. Only when one prodded at each individually like Suizhou had, then also took the time to untie and examine them, could anything be found out. That brothel madam wouldn't be able to yell about false accusations now. Ji Yang promptly strode out and told Wang Zhi of what had been discovered. Wang Zhi looked at the brothel madam and asked, "Do you want to say anything?" Her face was unreadable, stiff-lipped as ever. That tunnel had been dug out during this building's construction for use as a ditch, then was abandoned afterwards and is no longer used. What's so strange about it? That fucking ditch of yours was dug out just enough for humans to enter it, Ji Yang sneered. They really took some great pains for it. Which craftsman made it? I'll hire him later. Wang Zhi had substantial proof, yet was calm as he spoke to her. You keep on saying that this place has Wantong's backing but he still hasn't shown up. Do you know why? You're nothing more than a brothel bod. If something happens, you'll always be shoved out to be the scapegoat. You claim to be on his side, but if there's someone that doesn't acknowledge that, what's to be done? In any case, we have the time, so we'll just interrogate you right here. If you refuse to speak, we'll keep asking until you do. Wei Mao. A middle-aged, stiff-faced man came out. He was a squad leader of the Western Depot, and the best at forcing out confessions. Now that this task had been handed over to him, he was entirely within his area of expertise. As soon as he waved his hand, 2 subordinates stepped forth, then firmly held down the brothel madam. We'll proceed with 10 unsullied fingers, he said as he came forward, having his men press her fingers onto the ground. Producing a pair of strangely shaped pliers from out of nowhere. He crouched down, nipped them onto one of her fingernails, then ruthlessly pulled them up. A. Her shriek rushed up to and broke through the clouds. All the customers and women in the brothel had since been gathered into the first floor by the Western Depot people. They helplessly watched this spectacle, every face turning pale with fear. They had always heard a lot about the depot's might, but it was only now that they got to witness an actual torture being conducted. For a long time after this, they would likely start trembling all over just from hearing its name. The name of 10 unsullied fingers sounded pleasant, but in reality, it was the pulling off of all 10 fingernails of a person's hands. Since fingers were connected to the heart meridian, it could be imagined how painful it was. All were white-faced as they saw the brothel madam howl in agony, suddenly feeling like their own nails hurt. When Tang Fan came out of the room, he heard Wang Ji talking to her, "You have 10 nails. It'll be slow going until your hands are done. There's still your feet, then, you know. If even those all get pulled off and you're still going strong, I'll accept your words." Her arms tightly restrained, she was unable to move, tears and snot flowing together. There was no need to mention how pitiful that previously overbearing old face looked at that moment. Even so, Tang Fan would never sympathize with someone like this. To put it bluntly, her heart was completely blackened. Even if she had nothing to do with the missing children, she had committed no lack of immoral deeds on a regular basis. Were she to experience every kind of torture in the Western Depot once, she likely still wouldn't be washed clean of her sins. Seeing that she still refused to speak, Wei Mao used the pliers to grasp the nail on her index finger. Right when he went to move, he heard her squeal like a pig getting butchered. "Don't. I'll talk. Don't do it. Let me go. Let me go." Onlookers might not know from experience the sensation of getting a nail lifted off, but the brothel madam really wanted to die right now. She itched to cut off her finger, as that might not hurt so much. She wailed with all her might, body twitching non-stop, though that still couldn't cast away the ache of bone-penetrating pain. Already unable to care about anything else, every secret in her head was far away, leaving only one thought behind: make the pain stop. Wang Ji waved his hand, following which she was picked up and escorted to the storage room. The door shut, leaving 4 people inside aside from her. "Speak," he said. "The children aren't here," she claimed as she sobbed. He raised a brow, thinking that she was going to shamelessly quibble again. "Wei Mao, get some salted water and sprinkle it on her finger," she screamed. No. I didn't lie. They're really not here. They left more than half a shishan ago. I only do business of the flesh. If the South Side gang abducted any children, they sometimes hide them away here temporarily, but they always take them away quickly. Did you see us coming, then informed them to leave? How many people were in their group? How many of them were children? Where did they escape to? Where does the secret tunnel lead to?" He threw out those few questions quickly. She looked at the pliers, which were very near. She had now been scared enough into answering all their questions. I didn't notify them. They left before you came here, because someone had come back ahead of time and said that they had seen your Western Depot doing an interrogation near the city towers. Thinking that things might get exposed, he hurried back, took all the children out of the cellar, then left by the tunnel. There were 3 adults, and about 8 children. Most of them were under 10, the tunnel leads outside the city. That's all I know. My place is only a transfer point, I don't know where they actually go. What is your position in the gang? Tang Fan asked. Who are the others in it? I handle the brothel. How could I talk about having any position? She cried out. I'm just a nobody in the gang. Human trafficking is all the domain of the second in command, I would never dare to ask anything about it. Occasionally, they would send over some tender-skinned children, saying that they brought them from the south and tell me to train them up, which I'll do, but I really don't know anything more. Wang Ji said nothing. Wei Mao directly poured salted water on the brothel madam's blood-stained finger. She wailed in agony but couldn't give anything useful anymore. Everyone could tell that she wasn't lying and her knowledge was evidently limited. Among those children, was there a fat little girl about 8 years old? Tang Fan questioned again. Her hair is put into double buns, and there's a red ribbon on her head. In order to not to suffer further, the brothel madam seriously thought back. It seems like there was, no, there definitely was. There was. I remember a girl like that. There was a smaller girl that had been crying the whole time and the man leading them got impatient so he went to beat her. The bigger girl protected the younger one, and she got slapped hard. His complexion went ashen. Dong had been born a slave, but ever since she had been with him, he was very fond of her. How could he have ever hit her? Now that he had heard that someone had struck her, he was immediately enraged. Wang Ji asked a few more questions, such as where the other hideouts of the gang were, where the man in charge was, what are the identities of those that took the children, and so on. She always answered that she didn't know and further torture had no effect. There's no time to waste. I'm going to look for them now. Tang Fan said. Sui Zhou nodded. We'll go together. He called Xueling and the rest over. Altogether, there were 5 of them including Tang Fan. They brought candles along, then bent over to enter the tunnel. It was relatively narrow. Only one person can pass through at a time, and even then, they had to stoop down to proceed. According to the brothel madam, the secret passage had been excavated very crudely. There was no illuminated flight of steps nor any sort of mechanisms, just a path that led out of the city. It was convenient for moving people and things that couldn't be seen, whenever they wanted. As the Jinyue were physically skilled, they responsibly walked in front while Tang Fan walked behind. They walked on for a while. Because the passage was craggy and uneven, Tang Fan was preoccupied with adapting to the environment, and thus was inattentive. By the time he had gotten a short distance along, he detected that somebody was following him. Turning back to look, he saw that it was Wang Ji, with a couple of his wardens. A place like this is dark and difficult to traverse. You've really been wronged, eunuch Wang. With your status, why should you do everything yourself? He couldn't resist mocking, still upset that he had asked Dong to be a bait. Eunuch Wang snorted with a grin. They must have someone outside of the city corresponding with them. I feared that with how few people you have, you'll inadvertently meet with them on the road, then make fools of yourselves. End chapter. The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 50. Knocked out. Sui Zhou, who was walking in front, cut off their bickering to ask, the manpower I brought tonight is limited, and they're all here with me now. Dare I ask if the Western Depot is watching outside of Xiaoyang? Inside this tunnel where one needed to bend to walk, Wang Ji's voice was still very calm. You still need to ask? Others shut the brothel down when I descended. That side has been covered. The other relaxed a little and said nothing else, focusing on scouting out the path ahead. Aside from breathing and footsteps in the stifling passageway, there was momentarily no other sounds. Their group went in a rush, walking for about the greater half of a shishan. The air here was thin and completely separated from the surface, linked to it by only its ends. As the route stretched on, it inevitably got stuffier to breathe in. Even the flames of the candles flickered in and out, so feeble that they could barely be regarded as anything. Tang Fan was inferior to everyone else in terms of martial skill, so this sensation was more prominent to him than anybody else in the group. For the sake of not falling behind or becoming a burden, he simply gritted his teeth and did not make a sound. All of a sudden, his foot was tripped by a rock and he stumbled forward, only for him to be snatched by the clothes on his back just in time. His shoulder was held by a hand as his figure was dragged back, averting his fate of falling face first onto the ground and eating crap. He didn't need to turn back to know that it was Wang Ji that had helped him out. Though overwhelmingly reluctant, he didn't want to go against his own upbringing. Thank you, he was obliged to mutter out. A mocking laugh came from behind him, followed by eunuch Wang's cold words. If you don't want to thank me, there's no need to force yourself. You civil officials suffer in life for the sake of saving face in death. If I had known, I would have kicked you on the ass so that you'd fall onto the man in front of you, too. What magnificent sight that would have been. Look at that, what a poor mouth eunuch Wang had. Others shouldn't thank him, but they couldn't not thank him, either. Tang Fan was angered half to death but mentally told himself that he wasn't going to bicker with him, so he didn't answer, simply rushing on ahead with a swelling head. As he couldn't pursue his victory, Wang Ji felt this to be rather dull. He curled his lip, ordering for a retreat. Xiaoyang was located in the capital's northeast, not far from the city gates, but this path was really long. As they go further down the path, they were all inwardly alarmed, thinking of how meticulous the one that had excavated this tunnel was. If they continued on like this, they would likely be in the outskirts by the time they got out. The human traffickers had left over half a Shishan before them, and if someone had received them already, it would likely now be very hard to overtake them. Everyone's legs and backs hurt, Tang Fan's especially, but the chilly air blowing against their faces roused their spirits. Knowing that the exit wasn't too far ahead, they quickened their steps. Sure enough, after another quarter hour, Xueling was heard to whisper, "We're at the exit." He passed off his candle to Suizhou, then effortlessly leapt out of the mouth of the tunnel. The others followed suit in climbing out, one after the other. Although the outside wind cut like a knife, everyone had been stuffed down there for so long, so for them, it felt rather refreshing. The moon remained bright tonight. Tang Fan surveyed their surroundings, then saw that they were currently situated within a forest. The hole they had just come out of was beneath a slope, with stones obstructing it and trees ahead of it. Had they not just walked it, it would have been hard to believe that the tunnel led straight to the storage room of a brothel in the capital. It was not just him, but it was likely that everyone instantly got a sense of incredulity. After a long while, Suizhou spoke up. Heading back would just be the capital again. They must have exited the forest and headed onward. Since they believed that they had built a hidden path, then exited the city into the open world with a bunch of children along with them. They had to have rested their feet afterwards. Our pace is a bit quicker, so we might be able to catch up to them. Nobody had any objections, of course, and they went out the forest to go along the government roads. The problem here was that they didn't have horses, meaning they could only rely on their legs to move them forward. Even with a quick pace, they wouldn't be getting anywhere fast. The good thing here, at least, was that they had only walked for 15 minutes before making a discovery. Appearing before them was a three-way fork in the road, two were official road and one was an off-road. All three led to different directions. Wang Ji knew the capital like his own property, but outside of the city, he was kind of blind. Upon seeing this, he frowned. Three paths, which one did they take? One of the two official roads leads to the Shenyi, Huairou region, and the other goes from Changping to Suanhua prefecture, Xueling said. The off-road is a big detour that ends at Tianjin Fort. Because of said detour, a ghost village have to be passed through not too far ahead. A plague had swept through there many years ago, almost its entire population died, and most of those that survived moved away. Now, it's deserted. Few would take that road. Wang Ji was sullen. Damn. 3 roads. How to choose? Xueling felt like he was in a bind, too. Even if they divided up into 3 groups to give chase, they had no horses and couldn't walk that speedily. The result would be like a cup of water to a cart on fire. Brother, should we go back, find a few horses then split up for the chase? He asked Suizhou. Our guards are all over the place. We can tell them to be high on alert. This was a good option for a lack of better solution, yet the man didn't answer. He was looking at Tang Fan, who was crouched not too far away and studying the tracks. Amidst their group, he was the most anxious one because Adong was one of the abducted children. Sui Zhou's emotions were normally somewhat restrained, but he similarly didn't want to see her abducted by human traffickers, stranded in parts unknown henceforth. Wang Ji was also very anxious. In fact, he was many times more anxious than either of them. As was known, he had hurried back from the front lines on a secret order that the emperor had handed him: investigate suspicious persons on Longevity Hill and get Zhu Yang's daughter back. Longevity Hill had been closed off during the imperial palace's repair in Yang Ul's reign. Placed to its north, it was also known as Viewing Hill, because in Beijing, only when standing upon it could one look down and view the entirety of the imperial city. For that reason, succeeding generations of emperors thought to forbid access to the hill, and the Longevity Hill was pretty much fully guarded. Even so, not everyone was incapable of ascending it, like the sorcerer Li Zilong. He had once bewitched a group of internal officials into bringing him on the top. Following that, the emperor would frequently get suspicious and insecure, thinking that someone was standing up there, watching him. A few days ago, he had dreamed that someone was on top of the Longevity Hill, which made him uneasy. He had the Eastern Depot and Chenghua go and investigate it, but they couldn't figure out the cause. He didn't trust their conclusion, thusly he ordered Wang Ji to return from the front lines to check things out. The latter had scrambled back post-haste, had people keep watch on the Longevity Hill for several days, and then inspected it once over. Nothing dubious had been found at all. It was nothing more than the emperor's own paranoia. Still, he had to randomly seek out a justification to handle this, which happened to coincide with this second case of the missing children. To avoid the emperor being unhappy and thus thinking that the Western Depot was incompetent and powerless, Wang Ji needed to do all he could to solve this case and retrieve Zhu Yang's daughter for two important reasons. 1. To display his skill, as well as to make the emperor feel that his depot still had use. Another was, he needed to comfort Zhu Yang, who was on the front lines. He had returned secretly. Not many knew of this, so wantonly publicizing it wouldn't be suitable. His return trip from Datong needed to be within a few days, because if the Eastern Depot came to know of it, Shang Ming would do something dirty, like send a memorial to take Wang Ji's place as army supervisor envoy so that he could focus on the search, which is unacceptable. Therefore, eunuch Wang's time was quite precious. The case needed to be solved in 2 days at most. The longer it dragged on, the worse it would be for him. This was why his heart could now practically be described as burning with anxiety. Go to the nearest post house and find a couple horses, he ordered his subordinates, tone poor. Wait. Tang Fan called out as he straightened up, then walked back to ask Xueling, you just said that the off-road leads to an abandoned village. Yes. How far is it from here? What's the minimum time to get there? It isn't far, about a quarter hour of walking. Are there any other villages to rest past it? Xueling shook his head. No. Because of the plague that devastated the place up, some passers-by later claimed that they had encountered ghosts there. After exiting the village, it's basically all wildlands, and then a big detour to Tianjin Fort. Lots of people would rather go to Tongzhou instead of suffering for no reason there. Tang Fan nodded. That's fine. We'll just go to the village, there's no need to find horses. The other was taken aback. You're saying that they went there? Not even dogs would take that road. His implication being, that he kind of didn't believe him. Tang Fan pointed at the ground. There's freshly pressed wagon ruts here. People supposedly seldom go that way, and yet the ruts are new, that means the other party left only recently. Aside from those human traffickers, who else would take this road in the middle of the night? Those 2 tracks of ruts are too shallow, and there's fresh ones on the government roads, too. They're even a little deeper. How can it be determined for certain that they went towards the village? Maybe they're deliberately drawing us down another road to hold us up. No. Since they're doing something illegal, they're definitely scared that someone will find them, especially with so many children in their carriage. When that carriage moves, the sound it made would be very loud, too. I just saw that the ruts on the official roads have wood shavings, while only the ones going to the village road don't. Furthermore, the rut marks are slightly uneven, which meant that the wheels might be wrapped in cloth. Only the carriage that was actually loaded with the children would require such extra arrangements. The tracks on the other roads ought to just be diversions. Once everyone thought about it, that seemed to be the truth. For caution's sake, Wang Zhi didn't dare to rest his hopes entirely upon Tang Fan's judgment. You all can go for it. I'll take people to get horses, search down the other roads separately, then come reconvene with you. Time was tight, so Tang Fan's group didn't say anything more. The two groups went their separate ways with a verbal agreement. Just as Xueling had said, they walked for about 15 minutes until they saw what seemed to be a village site not too far ahead. Moonlight shone down upon it, reflecting off the withered thatch roofs. Reason dictated that an inhabited village would feel a certain way to spectators, even if every single household had gone to bed. A dog would bark on occasion, for example, or pigs in a pen might squeal, or someone's child might cry. Whether from the windows that hadn't been fixed in years, or the few houses that were in such disrepair that their roofs were half gone, a message was sent to Tang Fan's group: the village before them was indeed abandoned. However, what caused everyone to feel inexplicably unsettled was not that the place had been deserted for long, that no one was populating it, but rather that the buildings still faintly emitted light. Weak candlelight shone through the ruined windows, bobbing and swaying, as if people inside were sewing or reading by light. Deep in the night at a ghost village, many houses were lit up inside. What kind of scene was this? Xueling had been in the Northern Administrative Court Division for many years, consciously training himself to have attractive iron guts, but with one look at this eerie picture, his scalp instantly exploded, densely packed goosebumps arose on his back and his hairs stood on end. This village had no name, he whispered. Everyone called it Su Village, because most of the people that had lived here were surnamed Su. Once a lot of people died of plague and the few remaining alive moved out overnight, the authorities purportedly sent people over to cremate the corpses. It took 2 days and nights to burn them all away. They didn't care to make a burial mound and had wanted to burn the whole village down, but it started raining as soon as they lit it up. This happened 3 times in a row. Rumors said that since the plague victims had died unjustly, their souls hadn't left, and they refused to let the village burn down. The authorities were then too afraid to try it again, so the place was completely abandoned afterwards. Generally, no one picks this path because of its tragic history. Are there actually ghosts? A Jinyue following Suizhou asked anxiously. No one's lived here for a long time, which happens to give certain people the opportunity to act strange, the man answered darkly. If they really have gone this way, this might be a trap they laid out for the sake of making us paranoid over ghosts. Take caution, everyone. Don't get caught in an ambush. Look, Tang Fan said. Not all of the buildings have candles lit in them. Suizhou nodded. We'll check out the unlit rooms first. Don't wander off, all of you. Follow me. At a time like this, he was able to embody the characteristics of a leader. Had someone else been in his position, with subordinates at his side to support him, he would definitely say something like, "You all go investigate it for any sign of activity." What Suizhou had said, though, was to follow him. A senior official willing to take the lead would naturally be admired and respected by their subordinates. Suizhou being popular in the Northern Administrative Court Division was not without reason. There were only about 5 unlit houses. Everyone brandished their weapons, checking them out one by one. Because of all the strange views in front of them, they were all extraordinarily vigilant, gripping their spring-gilt sabers tightly, bodies tense to the extreme. Each time a house was kicked open, they kept their eyes staring at it unerringly, for fear that something dangerous would charge out of it. Tang Fan didn't need to put in any effort, of course. He followed at the end, as if he was a spare. Their eyes had now already adapted to the dusky environment of the outskirts, and that bit of adaptation made it so that there was nothing they couldn't see. The unlit homes were pitch black, and after getting kicked open by Suizhou, they were discovered to have nothing but simple furnishings inside them. In some houses, the beds were piled with a disarray of blankets. After just one prod with the tip of a saber, the bedding that had long gone brittle from sitting there would shortly break apart. The chairs on some houses had also since gone decrepit, collapsing with one bump. By the time they came to sequentially inspect the fifth house, no one was as nervous anymore. They were mentally still on guard but had finally relaxed a little. "Brother, there's a carriage parked in the back." A Chenghua, who had been responsible for checking the surroundings of the house, quickly came from behind it to report. Hearing this, Suizhou's group successively wound around the back, then caught sight of a carriage stopped between the home's backyard and the side of the mountain wall. Upon taking a closer look, its four wheels were indeed covered in a thick layer of cloth, just as Tang Fan had stated earlier. It was exceedingly likely that the others had fled here. The carriage was present, but the people was nowhere to be found. It would have been easy for those couple of adults from the South Side gang to flee if they had martial arts, but the problem with that was that they also had a group of children with them, who weren't easy to maneuver. Where could they possibly be hiding? At this time, they heard Tang Fan give a fleeting, hushed exclamation, "Someone's here." He hadn't come to see the carriage with them, still standing at the entrance of the house to closely inspect things. This made him the one most likely to detect movement outside. Suizhou reacted speedily. Following Tang Fan's words, he turned, clearly saw the spot he was pointing out, then locked onto the other party's position. This was all in the brief span of only a few breaths. Beneath the moonlight, a black shadow scrambled out of an unlit house not too far away, moving at flying speed, nearly risking his life to flee. Were Tang Fan to give chase, he definitely wouldn't be able to catch up. He couldn't, but someone else certainly could. This person was quick, but Suizhou was even quicker. The event went faster than could be narrated. Suizhou gave chase, his figure was hopping like a rabbit and diving like a hawk. The saber he held did not stay idle, getting thrown directly at the man. Only a shriek was heard reverberating in the wilderness as he got nailed on the shoulder, falling heavily onto the ground. Right then, Xueling and the rest had also caught up, roughly pressing the person, then drawing the spring-gilt saber out of his shoulder. The man squealed like a butchered swine again, after which he stopped completely. Xueling snatched him by his lapels. "Speak. Where are the rest and the children?" The man groaned. I don't know." Seeing that he was still being stiff-lipped, Xueling exerted some strength to break the man's right pinky. "Aaaaa." The other's face contorted with pain, eyes showing enormous fear. "Are you going to talk or not?" Xueling didn't have the patience to deal with him, so he broke one of his ring fingers. I'll talk, the man sobbed out. "They brought the children up the mountain." "Liar. Why would they abandon the carriage and choose to go up there instead?" I'm not lying." A blade had hit his shoulder, making it seep with blood, and two of his fingers were broken. He wailed with pain, not very different with how the brothel madam with plucked nails had reacted earlier. No matter how tough-boned he was, he could only surrender before the Chenghua. The carriage broke because it was carrying too many people. The front wheels split and would have fallen apart if they kept going, so they had to stop here and flee to the mountain. They took the children with. They aren't far, so you can catch up if you go now. Why are you here alone, then? The man panted. They made me stay and light candles in those houses, to scare and delay you all a bit. There was basically nothing else to ask after this. Suizhou gave Xueling a look and the latter understood implicitly. The hilt of his saber struck the back of the man's head hard, and he collapsed limply to the ground. "He won't die yet," Suizhou said to Tang Fan. "You can stay here and help bandage him while we go up the mountain in pursuit." Tang Fan nodded, speaking no nonsense. All right, leave it to me. Go, quickly. He didn't know martial arts, nor was his pace quick. He would only be a lagging burden going up, and should a fight break out, he would be absolutely no help. It would be better to keep watch here, so that if Wang Zhi brought his people over, he could receive them. Suizhou's group left in a rush. Meanwhile, Tang Fan peeled off the man's outer robe, tore a strip off of it, then wound it around his armpit a couple of times, binding it tightly to stop the bleeding. The abandoned village was lonesome under the mooned night. Cold wind passed through the dilapidated doors and windows, it sounded like a wailing ghost. It really lived up to the rumors of it being haunted. The heavily injured and unconscious man laid beside him notwithstanding, standing alone in the chilly breeze inevitably gave him the illusion of being the only one left in the world. Coupled with the dancing shadows and flickering flames inside some of the houses, the ambience was extremely so fitting. If it were to be claimed that this place wasn't haunted, no one would believe it. As he thought of this, he felt that something was a bit off. It would be reasonable to say that with the hard wind outside and busted windows, those candles should have long been blown out, but at least over half were still shining right now, not extinguished in the gale. This South Side gang member was evidently pretty diligent at setting things up to scare people. They had arrived in a hurry, afraid that the longer they took, the farther the human traffickers would get, as once they were out of the capital's bounds, it would be a lot harder to locate them again. Regardless of whether it was Tang Fan or Suizhou, they had to make decisions in a very limited amount of time. Since he had nothing to do at the moment, Tang Fan leisurely brought these particulars to mind. He picked the nearest house, then pushed at its door. Following a creak, it opened in response. He found that the candle holder placed beside the window happened to be blocked in front by a wall so that it wasn't directly facing the draft. There was also a white glass cover over the flame with a small plank of wood pressing down on it so that the wind couldn't get in, which made it hard for the flame to go out. He approached it, then lifted the plank. The inside was filled with lamp oil, and the wick was thicker than normal ones. No wonder it hadn't gone out. His heart thumped, as he suddenly realized that something was wrong. This village had been abandoned for years, so how could there be such new, translucent lamp oil, and such a thick wick? These people were supposedly escaping, which was why they had picked this road, but even if they had planned this in advance, how could they have also brought oil and wicks with them? Right then, a burst of rustling sounds came from outside. Acting on impulse, he turned and strode out, only to see that there was no one outside. The gang member that had just been knocked out was gone, too. They had been set up. His heart sank. Before he had time to think more about it, the back of his head was struck hard, and he pitched forward, losing consciousness. Karma really do come around. That man had just gotten knocked out by Xueling, and now it was his turn. That was his last thought before everything went dark. End chapter.